Is your transformation plan radical enough to thrive? How can technology help you reimagine your working world? Are you reframing your future? Or is the future reframing you? In this time of change, find out how we can help you uncover opportunities now, next, and beyond.
You could argue that it's an understatement to say that the aerospace industry has been devastated by the effects of COVID-19. How much so, and how do we recover? What's the impact going to be? Well, we're joined today with somebody from Ernst & Young who really knows all this stuff. It's Matt Ward, who's the UK head of aerospace and defence for Ernst & Young. Matt, welcome to the programme. Let's talk about this COVID-19 and the impact it's had on the supply chains for the industry.
Sure. Thanks, Alan. I think compared with other industries, the aerospace industry and the supply chain are facing some of the greatest complexities and challenges in the global economy. Even before the pandemic, we were seeing the starts of challenges, geopolitical turmoil, trade wars, other trade issues with Brexit, and safety issues that were particularly impacting the commercial side of the market. Having said that, I think COVID has actually demonstrated some things that are great about the industry. It's been able to rapidly bring innovative medical technologies and products to market, PPE, ventilators, evidencing its innovation and creativity. But I think as you look forward, we've seen a huge drop off in demand for new commercial aircraft, depending on the segment, between 30 and 50%. And it's going to take 3 to 5 years for those markets to recover. Single aisles, I think, recovering more rapidly than wide bodies. Looking at the sort of now, I think we're seeing production restarts, but that recovery has been exacerbated by the need to burn off inventory that businesses have accumulated to support higher rate production and to mitigate disruption from Brexit, which and those factors have to be balanced with the need to retain skills and capability. I think on the defence side, demand has been sustained. It's likely to remain steady, but the supply chains have been disrupted by pandemic-related shutdowns. Manufacturers have had to reconfigure production lines to enable, better workplace safety and compliance with local guidelines on distancing, etc. And this has caused, and it's going to continue to cause, both in defence but also more broadly in civil aerospace, dent in productivity going forward. So I think if we look at things in the context of now, next and beyond, in the near term, we're looking at a shift in supply chains, constraints on, rapid ramp up in production. Order books are going to take time to recover. And I think you're going to see issues such as discussions and about changing contract terms within the supply chain. So I think as we move forward, we'll see a reassessment of production location, production footprint, and that's likely to lead to some consolidation.
So, in fact, not just reviewing all the books, there'll be a lot of cancellations. I mean, it is going to be gloomy, and it's going to be gloomier than we thought it was going to be before the pandemic, when we thought there were going to be problems coming up. So that seems to go right the way across that supply chain anyway, whether they're dealing with business aircraft, defence, or commercial. So do you see this as being a period of consolidation? Are we going to see these businesses having to come together through necessity?
I think we will. Yeah, I think if you look back at past crises, and the industry's had a very good track record of recovering from past crises, but one of the consequences has been a consolidation of the supply chain. If you look back at 2009 and you look back at the post 9/11, and the reasons why are that we've now got a smaller market size given the lower production rates. We've got a lot of the cash flow for aircraft leases and aircraft purchases will go to the supply chain, and the customers are going to be looking for more cost competitive product. OEMs, I think, are going to be looking for new sources of funding and support, but they all have a vested interest in maintaining the viability and the resilience of their supply chains to meet future demand. And so, when the markets do start to upturn, companies are going to have to look at their footprint, look at how cost competitive they are, and whether they've got a competitive advantage or disadvantage as a consequence. So, I think that forms of horizontal and vertical consolidation will be part of that to take cost out. I think one of the other dynamics that will accelerate this is the role that different governments will be playing. So we're seeing governments starting to play an active role in supporting struggling industries, and in some territories with specific aviation packages. It's likely that this government intervention will come with stipulations which may be to do with job preservation, it may be to do with reshoring production into that country, and or to drive towards new new technologies, whether that's net zero or something else.
So it sounds like the pandemic could, in many ways, remake the aerospace industry.
Yes, yeah, I think that's a fair challenge and fair observation, Alan. So I think if you look at the emergence of new technologies, I think if you look at the focus on cost that came after the global financial crisis, it led to a reduction in independent suppliers. Bluntly, I think these black swan events, as people describe them, have a way of altering the course of a market and reframing industry and its participants' strategic priorities.
So, if you were advising one of the smaller independent companies now, what would you be asking them to do? What should aerospace companies and their suppliers be focusing on at this point?
I think you've got to be really rigorous in understanding, how you achieve cost savings, but also, whether that has to be balanced by the risk of disrupting trade flows, and the ability to keep flexibility. We can make predictions about possible outcomes and scenarios for the crisis, but the core driver for the disruption, COVID, is beyond our control, and it's hard to predict. So whilst a vaccine could be discovered, that's going to take time. So I think the key thing is people need to think about their, how they plan and model different scenarios, and how that business will respond under different scenarios. So, the first thing we're seeing, and we've been working with industry and looking at the pulse of industry over the last 3 months, and we've seen a shift in how people have responded at the outset. most of our respondents were saying we're absolutely focused on cash and preservation. I think we're now seeing we're now seeing feedback where people are saying our view on order book is down. It's the consensus seems to be 25% plus down on 4 or 5 months ago, but the view has stabilized over the last couple of months. We're not hearing people saying it's getting worse. So people are sort of now starting to think about recovery and resurgence. With that in mind, there's still an imperative focus on cash, understanding options around funding sources. Secondly, I think businesses need to be understanding and considering the impact of their material contract terms. One of the key factors in that is we've had contracts being let with industry where they've been predicated on production increases that everybody anticipated up to 6 months ago. We're now in a very, very different environment where production is now 30 to 50% lower. A lot of the pricing in those contracts was based upon an assumption of sharing economies of scale that are now not going to be achieved. So there's going to be a need to renegotiate some of these contracts and pricing, and I think it's important for smaller suppliers to be aware of that and recognise their fixed versus variable costs and what that will do to their pricing and profitability, because that will go to their cash generation going forward.
And Matt, can I ask you about one particular sector that's quite interesting? Is the MRO, the maintenance and repair businesses, which until the COVID-19 struck was really one of the sort of standouts of our industry, highly lucrative business lines. But demand's plummeted. I mean, what's going to happen with those businesses if there are not as many aircraft? How are they going to recover?
Yeah, I think it is a particularly dire situation for the MRO sector at the moment. As you say, the downturn in air traffic, fleet grounding has either negated or it's deferred the need for flight cycle maintenance. There's still a small amount of air traffic going. That is recovering. We think they should plan for a slow ramp up. I think they need to be very focused on the level of cost, level of inventory they are holding. And one of the things where I think we see opportunities in the future will be, increased use of used serviceable material to maintain cost. I think that used serviceable material has been scarce, in recent years, but I think the demand will increase rapidly over the next couple of years, given the pace of retirements of older aircraft. Allied to that, I think they need to be thinking about the increased use of technology. I mean, technology and use of data is well advanced in the industry already, but increased use of robotic process automation for better decision making, the use of digital twin technology for assessment of how the business will respond to different scenarios. So I think it's a combination of factors, but with a laser focus on cash and engagement with the customer on service.
So Matt, I'm getting from you, and I know E&Y are in touch with a lot of the big companies and audits and so on. It sounds to me like you believe there will be a recovery and we get back to normal, if you like. When do you think it's going to be?
I wish I knew the right answer to that, Alan. But I think that our hunch is, it will recover first in the single aisle space. I think that's going to be sort of later this year, early next year. You will see a more rapid recovery in flights, and I think you'll see the airframers, giving more certainty on orders on the single aisle fleet. So I think for us, that's probably a 2022-23 recovery. I think the wide body market is going to be a bit after that. So those would be my broad views.
But there is hope at the end of all this and light at the end of the tunnel. Matt Ward, UK lead for Aerospace and Defence for UK&I. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Alan.
Has this moment changed customer expectations forever? How can you transform at speed to build value that lasts? Are you reframing your future? Or is the future reframing you? In this time of change, find out how we can help you uncover opportunities now, next, and beyond.